there, everybody. This is Rogue of the X-Men, and I'm very excited to be here on ToyQuest101 with Ileana and Miguel.
My name is Ileana, my father Miguel.
And I'm so excited because we have the Southern Belle of the X-Men, Rogue herself, on the show. Lenore, thank you so much for being on the show. We've had several of the X-Men casts on the show, but what a great way to end Autism Awareness Month with you on the show. We're so excited. Thank you so much.
Listen, I'm very happy to be here, especially for Autism Awareness Month. I think that's such an important issue, and my hello goes out to everybody, all the families who have anybody on the autism spectrum, and it's just great to be here.
Oh, thank you so much. That's awesome. So let's start with maybe telling us a little bit about yourself so our audience can get to know you better.
Wow, well, my real name is Lenore Zann, and that's my real name. I'm from Australia originally, from Sydney, Australia, where I was born, and I grew up there for about 8 years before we moved, my family, my mom and dad and I moved to Canada, where they've remained and I've remained. But I remember, I was thinking about this just recently. When I was really little, I remember I was an only child till I was 12. My sister wasn't born till I was 12 here in Canada, in Nova Scotia. But when I was little and I was an only child, my grandmother in Australia used to look after me quite a bit because my parents were young and they were teachers and they were building a home and stuff like this. So my grandmother looked after me out in the bush in Australia. So I got to like grow up with all the Australian animals and in the bush. And my very first friends were Aboriginal children, so the Indigenous children in Australia. And my grandmother and their grandmother would oftentimes have tea together in the afternoon and tell us stories about the bush and its creatures. And I got to be very much in tune with the land and with Mother Nature and all of her children, so to speak. So I think that was very formative in my my belief that we are all together, we are all one, we're all connected, and that we all need to take care of each other, and that we're all equal, that nobody, no race, no nationality, no gender, no anything is greater or more important than any other. And that, I think, is very important when you think about me playing Rogue, because this is one of her core points as well. Also, I remember I played a game, which is very funny now that I think about it, but being an only child, my grandmother had this old grandfather clock, like it was like a great big huge old clock that stood from the ground to like 5 feet, 6 feet tall. And I had made up this game that I would get my grandmother to sit on the couch that was in front of the grandfather clock, and I would hide in behind the grandfather clock. And I said, every time I came out from behind the grandfather clock, I was a different person. And my grandmother had to guess who I was. So I could be like a famous star, or I could be like one of our family members, or I could be a neighbor, or I could be a character that I'd seen on television. But my grandmother had to like guess through my actions and whatever I made up, what I said. And I didn't change my costume or anything. It was just me. And I thought, you know what? That's the beginning of an actor right there.
I was about to say, that's the beginning. That's the origin story of how you started acting. That's actually
right.
Cool. That's great. That's awesome. And I know you've done a lot of things in your lifetime, but the biggest thing obviously has been X-Men, right? We love X-Men.
Yeah.
So, why don't you ask me a question about the X-Men?
Talk to us about the X-Men animation series and how you got your role as Rogue.
Okay, well, Ileana, I had been acting for some time. I became a professional actor when I was 17. I'd already done a couple of professional shows in my summer times in between my high school years. And the rule was here that once you'd done 3 professional shows, then you could apply and would be accepted for your acting card, your actor's equity card. So by the time I was 17, I'd done 3 shows in the summers in between my high school years. And I went off to university where I studied acting, drama, and also political science, which was another of one of my interests, politics. And by the time I was 19, I was back doing another summer show professionally, and I got discovered by a writer he'd written a new show, a musical about the life of Marilyn Monroe.
Oh, yeah. I remember reading it, yeah.
Yeah, and so he saw me perform on stage this one night, and he turned to his wife, and the two of them said to each other, like spontaneously, "That's Marilyn." And then the next thing I knew, I was being flown off across the country and auditioning for an English director who had done, he did Oliver, the original Oliver, musical Oliver on Broadway and in England, in the West End. And he gave me an audition and hired me on the spot to play Marilyn Monroe. And that was then the beginning of my real, like, doing movies, television, theater, but all around the world, like across North America and all around the world. And by the time I was 31, I was performing in New York off Broadway in a play called Unidentified Human Remains and the True Nature of Love. It was a pretty wild play, but a really good play. I did that for about a year in Chicago and then about several months in New York. And I came back home to Toronto, and my agent said, "Lenore, I'm so glad you're back. There's this animation series, and they're looking for a character who's got a low, husky, sexy voice, who can do a Southern accent." And I had played a number of those kinds of roles in television and on film by that time. So, and in fact, off Broadway as well. So I went to the callbacks. I missed the original ones, and I just made it in for the callbacks. And as soon as I opened my mouth and said a few lines from the show, I could hear on the headphones the producers in Los Angeles screaming and going, "Oh my God, where did she come from? Don't let her go. That's Rogue," you know? And that's how I got the part. So it's interesting how, it's almost like every 10 years, some role comes along that people go, "Whoa, she's perfect for this role." And then I get the role, and it like sends me on another journey in my career. So it's pretty interesting.
Yeah, it's fascinating to us. I mean, obviously, like I said before, for those viewers watching, we've had Cal Dodd on the show, we had Eric and Julia on the show, and it's amazing to me how you've never done voice over acting until the X-Men, correct?
Right. I had done one show that same season. Like I had done one that same season around the same time, and then X-Men.
But the amount of resume that all the voiceover actors had, Cal Dodd, the guy who played Beast,
George Buza.
Yeah. I mean, these guys are all incredible with the theater and all that. And right. I think that's what really made the series come together was like, I mean, the chemistry was crazy, and how they talked to us about how things happened back in the day, how when you guys were recording, how you guys weren't always together, how obviously a lot different than what it is now. And we'll get to X-Men 97 later. But I just think it's an amazing, and the fact that you guys had such a huge professional resume, and none of it had to do with voice acting, but it came together so well. And I think you nailed it. Your voice is so iconic. I think anybody could agree that when they're reading the comic books, I hear your voice. I don't hear anybody else's voice. I hear you.
Yeah. That's cool.
Voice is just amazing.
I've been told that.
Yeah.
Thank you. And here's another interesting tidbit along that for anybody who's interested in these interesting little connections. Synchronicity, I call it. When I was 12, before I started performing at all, before I even knew I could sing and act or anything, my parents here in Nova Scotia took me over to see a show in Prince Edward Island, which is another province or state like here in Canada, near where we live here in Nova Scotia. And they did a summer festival every year where they did shows. And actually it ended up being where I got discovered to play Marilyn Monroe in the end, like by the age of 19. However, when I was 12, they took me over to see Anne of Green Gables, the musical, which is based on all the books of Anne of Green Gables. There's like a couple of TV series now and movies and stuff of Anne of Green Gables, and I loved Anne of Green Gables. I loved her. So I went to see that, but also that summer, they were doing a new rock opera, a new rock and roll musical about Hamlet, about the Shakespearean play Hamlet.
Yeah.
And Cal Dodd played Hamlet.
Yes. Oh, what a small world, right? That's crazy.
Yeah. So when I saw it at 12, I said, my eyes opened really wide, and I went, that's what I want to do when I grow up.
Now, does he know that? Did he?
I don't know if he knows. I don't know if he's heard that story, because I just suddenly put 2 and 2 together recently, and because of COVID, we haven't been to any Comic-Cons or anything like that, right? So normally these stories get told at Comic-Cons, but we went to a few of them, and then bang, the pandemic happened and they all shut down. And we had just started going to them, like, you know, it was a new thing for us. We didn't even know how popular our show was until we went to a couple of the Comic-Cons, and then we were blown away at how popular the show really was.
Yeah, so that's one of my questions too. So I'll just jump into that one real quick. So speaking of these Comic-Cons, right? So obviously back in the day, there wasn't that much internet, Twitter and all that stuff wasn't really around. I mean, now you guys are finally starting to get to the Comic-Cons. You got together before X-Men 97 was a thing. You guys got together, right? And now all of a sudden you see lines of people lining up to see Rogue. You know, what was your reaction behind that? Did you think, I mean, obviously, I know you guys going into the animated series didn't know what was going to happen. And then obviously it was a hit. It saved Fox, all this stuff, right? One of the best series in, you know, back in the 90s period, if not the best. And you went up against Batman, the animated series. You went up against a couple of heavy hitters. But how did it feel going to the Comic-Cons and just getting your mind blown, right? Like, oh my goodness, people know who we are. People still love us. It's almost a decade later, and X-Men 97 or X-Men animated series is still alive. How did that feel?
To be honest, we were really touched, and we were blown away. Like, we're all working actors, so you know, we don't like it wasn't in our journey to say, oh, we're going to become a big star and we're going to be famous. We were all like working actors. We wanted to do good work with our roles, and we just wanted to keep working. So the fact that the show had been so successful and so popular, we had no idea. Nobody ever really told us. And so when we went to, say, for instance, Los Angeles Comic-Con, man, there were like 100,000 people there, and we just couldn't believe it. And the people that would come up and tell us their stories and how we'd touched their lives and helped them as kids get through like high school or even like the early years, if a lot of them were bullied or they felt alone or they were autistic, and they could relate to the X-Men because the X-Men were considered kind of different and, like sort of looked at with either disdain or just misunderstood. And so for us to hear those stories, and from the LGBTQ2 plus community, it was very, very humbling. And it just makes us feel like we're so grateful that we were given the opportunity to do a show that would touch so many lives in that way. And now, I mean, we're going to talk about it later, but to be able to do it again now and bring it up to date and with new young generations of kids, that's really exciting.
Yeah, so that's another thing I wanted to talk about. You know, obviously I grew up with the X-Men animated series. I grew up in Puerto Rico. We didn't have cable. We had 3 channels. One was soap operas, one was the news, and one was X-Men in Spanish. Added in Spanish, and then obviously, we had it in English too afterwards. But now with X-Men animated series on Disney Plus, new generations start to see it. So I feel like it's growing. But, like you said, X-Men animated series touched a lot of lives. I think it was really ahead of its time, right? It really, told things a different way when other people weren't talking about it, which I'm kind of excited even more for the X-Men 97 and what's to come now, that, there's more things out there and less pressure to talk about it than what it was back in the day when we guys were doing X-Men animated series. But what does it mean to you playing Rogue as a character and hearing these stories from people like me or people at the cons that go up to you and tell you, hey, Rogue was somebody I looked up to, right?
Well, I'll tell you, I love the characters that I play, and everybody has their demons and they have their angels. And everyone has a struggle of some sort, whether or not they show it or not. And to make a character really human, so to speak, you really have to dig into those parts of their psyche, you know, what made them who they are. So to play Rogue, a character who is kind of lost in the beginning, you know, she thought she had a life with her family. It seems like her father was a bit abusive. She developed her powers as a teenager at the age of like 13. And interestingly enough, at 13, that's when I started to come to blossom into like a young woman. And people started to pay attention to me. The boys in particular started to pay more attention to me then than when I was younger. And how do you handle that? How do you handle that attention, which to a teenager it can make you feel awkward and embarrassed and kind of shy? And so I was always a thinker. I was always a seeker. I was always seeking what's life all about? What is everything all about? Why am I here? What's my purpose? Who am I anyway? And always seeking for sort of almost like a spiritual answer to why we're all here and what are we all meant to do in this life that we have in this little tiny blue planet that we all share. And so Rogue goes on a vision quest, really, when she gets kicked out of her house by her father and mother, who don't understand and don't want to have a mutant in their home. And she feels betrayed. She feels abandoned. She goes searching throughout the world, throughout the universe, really to find her place there. And if you look at any of the goddess mythologies, like Pele in Hawaii, for instance, same story. And Pele found her place in Hawaii when she put down she had a big stick and she put it down in the ground and said, I'm done, right? She said, I'm done traveling. This is going to be my home. And she built it with lava and volcanoes and hot, you know, it was all heated. She's very passionate. And that made the Hawaiian Islands, right? And I relate to all of that. And I feel that that's very similar to Rogue. She didn't put down her staff. That's the word I was trying. She didn't put down her staff. She heard a voice calling to her saying, mutant, you're lonely. Mutant, you're lost. Mutant, are you ready to come home? We have a home for you. You can belong. And I think that's what everybody's looking for. Everybody wants to belong to somebody or something, or, you know, that's why we create all the false walls that we put up to make ourselves different from other people. It's like, instead of going, no, we're all one family. We're all one family here. We need to look after each other. And so in Rogue's case, she finds Professor X. He brings her to the X Academy for Gifted Mutants, and she finds a family. And I can relate to all of that. For some reason, I was doing the same thing, traveling the world, trying to find myself, trying to find out who my ancestors were, where did we come from. With a name like Zann, you know, where did that come from? And it turns out it was Croatian, you know, Zaninovic generations ago in Croatia. So, you know, but I've got Croatian and Irish and Welsh, and Scottish and British. And when you look into the Croatian background, in the little island of Hvar, where I came from, it started with indigenous native people called the Illyrians. And then the Greeks came, then the Venetians came, and then the Slavs came, and it's a melting pot. And so, you know, I love stuff like that. And I'm bit by bit, I'm still finding out who I am. but Rogue is doing the same thing. And we go through, you know, very major catastrophes, tragedies, and we also have to come out and survive. And we're survivors. So it's going to be a very interesting story. I'm going to tell you that. Get better buckle up your seatbelts, because we're in for a very exciting ride.
I can't wait. And you could tell when somebody's invested in their character, right? Because Rogue was so amazing. I mean, all the characters are amazing, but every character could relate to somebody out there. And that's what I really loved about the X-Men animated series. But speaking of that, Eliana, why don't you ask that question?
What was your favorite Rogue moment?
Your favorite Rogue moment of the X-Men animated series, the one that was close to your heart, which one was it?
Well, there are a few of them, but I'd say in A Rogue's Tale, where you hear her backstory, there are a few moments when she's floating up in the air trying to figure out who she is, cross-legged, and she hears Professor X's voice. That's a pretty powerful moment. But also remembering back to when she was 13 and she says, you know, I remember I had me a boyfriend when I was 13. Had me a boyfriend till I kissed him. Poor boy went into a coma for 3 days. God, so if I touched anybody, it just drove the life right out of him. That part I really love.
That is awesome. I love that. That's awesome. Look at this. Look at this. We got this. I wanted to show this. This is old school. This is back when KB Toys was around. This
Right.
is Toy Biz, a Rogue figure. And how cool is it now? I mean, even back then, all these Rogue figures and stuff. I mean, I see you got a couple in the background. How does it feel to, you know, have these figures out too?
Pretty cool. It's pretty amazing. I'm looking forward to seeing what they do with me next. I think Hasbro is doing one. But also I had one when I was younger too. After I did X-Men, I did a number of other animation series then, and one of them was it was called Heroes. What was it called? Oh, Rescue Heroes. And I played a female firefighter. And they had toys where if you press the button in the figure, our voices came out. And we said various different things. So you press the button and our voices came out and said a number of sentences. So that was pretty damn cool. Also, when I went to New York after 9/11, I was just, oh my gosh, gobsmacked when I saw in front of the Toys R Us store that was right in Times Square there. They had like a 12-foot version of my doll, of the Rescue Heroes doll. Her name Wendy Waters. It dressed in the New York Fire Department uniforms.
So did you go up to them and be like, "Hey, that's me," or did anybody know, or did you just kind of leave it?
No, I didn't do that. I was just like, that would have been funny. I'm in Times Square. Nobody would have believed me. Probably they'd just think, "Oh, well, that's another person just talking to themselves or something," you know. But no, but I didn't even take a picture of it. Now that I think of it, it's like too bad. I would love to get a picture of that.
I know. It was Toys R Us, right?
Yeah, that was my
Toys R Us is not even around anymore.
I know.
Yeah.
It was my favorite one. I don't know. They used to have like a big circus wheel thing in there, and a big like a giant Godzilla. You know.
Yeah, it was a cool store.
Yeah.
Cool store. Now the only thing they got over there is Midtown Comics. That's been there for a while. So before we get to the bread and butter, right, to X-Men 97, right?
Yes.
I want to talk a little bit about your political career, because between the X-Men animated series and now, that's kind of what you ventured into, and you've done so much for the community. Yeah. So talk to us about, you know, a little bit about your political career and the things that you did for your community.
Wow, thank you for asking. Well, it's been 12 years that I ventured away from acting and into politics. Now, some people might say, oh, well, that's the same thing. Well, in my case, no, I am what I am. I am who I am. And I enjoyed just being me and not playing a character for a change. I come from it's a very small rural community here, and called Truro, Nova Scotia. and it's close to the big city, but it's rural. So we needed a lot of different things here, like farmers markets and various different infrastructure. We had a huge flood right after I became a member of the Legislative Assembly of Nova Scotia at one point, and I brought the Premier of Nova Scotia to our community to see the destruction and to go into people's basements and see how much water there was, and they didn't have any insurance for flooding and things like this. A lot of infrastructure damage, a lot of personal people's damage. So I managed to get the government to give us like $9.5 million to help restructure everything and build things, and help give people money to fix up their basements and replace their refrigerators and freezers full of food and things like this that they lost. That was one of my first big challenges. And then you fast forward, I was I had many different roles, many different hats. Like I was an opposition member for 6 years, and I had critic roles of the environment, post-secondary education, early childhood development and education, status of women, arts and culture, film and television, business, African Nova Scotian affairs, Indigenous affairs, things like this. And so I would introduce bills that were meant to try and help improve life for all of these kinds of different issues and people. And it culminated in me introducing a private member's bill, we call them, called An Act to Address Environmental Racism. And environmental racism is the disproportionate number of toxic waste sites, dumps, landfills, and corporate polluters that are placed on or beside racialized communities. So like Indigenous communities or Black communities or other racial communities. And why were they placed in these places over the years, one might ask? And if you think about it, it's because the people of the day, the business people and the governments of the day, did not think that those people were as important as white society. So they placed them farther away from the center of town, from the white society, and in where they said, oh, well, it doesn't matter what happens to them. Meanwhile, those people who are just as important as everybody else are getting sick from the pollutants that are in the air and in the water and in the land. So I introduced that bill provincially. It didn't pass provincially, but then I left provincial politics and I ran for federal politics 2 years ago, won, and introduced it federally. And now it's coming back for second reading this month, April 26th. And I'm going to fly to Ottawa to be there for that. I'm no longer a member of parliament, but my friend she reintroduced it for me, and it's going through the House, and we're hoping that this time it gets passed.
Ooh, I'm hoping for that too. That's awesome. And I really wanted to talk a little bit about that because you played a superhero in the XMen animated series, and a lot of the people don't know that you actually are a real life superhero and doing a lot for your community there. So thank you for that. That's awesome. I really hope big things. I follow you on social media, so hopefully I'll catch up and see what happens there. But that's really, really cool to know, right?
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you. All right, so let's talk about XMen 97. I am so pumped up for this. So originally, just so you know, we had Cal on, we had Eric and Julia on twice, but the first time we had Cal on and the first time we had Eric and Julia, we talked about bringing back the X-Men, right? Where it left off. And we petitioned for it. We put it on social media. I mean, our YouTube has 70 million views. It was out there. And along with other people out there in the YouTube community that was doing the same. And a couple months later, less than a year, we got the news, right? It went all over the socials, all over Twitter, that XMen 97 was a thing. So when we got Eric and Julia back on, that's all we talked about. Like, oh my goodness, we just put this out to the universe. It happened now. How excited is everybody? So now that we have you on, right? And obviously, guys, for you viewers that you know already, there's certain things we can talk about, and there's a lot of things we can't talk about. And we don't like spoilers, so we're not going to ask those questions. But the question I will ask is how did it feel, right? Well, two-part question. How did it feel when you got the call to be Rogue again and a continuation of the X-Men animated series into X-Men 97? And then how nervous were you when they announced it to the general public?
Wow, that's a very big question, my friends. Let's put it this way. It couldn't have come at a better time, because after the 2 years of being in federal politics, there was another very quick election, like a sort of an early election, and I lost my seat. Even after doing all those things that I'd done and everything for 12 years, I lost my seat. So I was really despondent, like very, very down, very depressed, very anxious about what do I do now with the rest of my life? You know, why did this happen? Is it my fault? What more could I have done? All of those kind of questions that you ask yourself. And then I got this, first of all, I got an email from a film producer in Nova Scotia saying, hey, Lenore, look, we're really so sad you lost your seat. You were a true champion for arts and culture and the environment and everything. And we're going to really miss you being up there looking, representing us in Ottawa. But does this mean now you could be in my feature film? Because I have a leading role I would love you to do. That was like 2 days after the election.
My goodness.
Yeah. And I'm still despondent. So I'm like, I wrote him back, well, send me a script. And then I read the script and it was like fantastic. And I was like, I'm in. I'll do it. So that happened. And then 2 weeks later, I get the call from from the casting director. First of all, it started off as an email, then it turned into a phone call, asking if I would be interested in reprising my role of Rogue in the X-Men, that they're suiting up and they're coming back.
Let's go.
And I was like,
everything happens for a reason.
Everything happens for a reason. Yeah, like the universe is looking after me. You just have to have faith rather than fear. And so, I mean, it was really astonishing. I also want to add, part of the reason I was extremely despondent too at this particular time was because we had a death in my family of my young 17-year-old niece who had a terrible type of cancer, osteosarcoma, which is a bone cancer. And she'd had it off and on for 3 years, but we thought she was out of the woods and she was healing and she was cancer-free, and then it came back. And she died. So, it didn't take very much time. It took about 6 months this last time, and she died last summer. So I was really grieving. And so when the casting director called me and we had this phone call conversation, this little red bird appeared out of nowhere. They're called cardinals.
Cardinals, yeah, we have them here.
Yeah, okay. So this little cardinal appeared and it landed on this little red table that she had made for me that was outside on my deck. And they say when a cardinal draws near, angels are here.
Yeah. I've heard that. Yeah.
And they say that, that it's like a messenger from your loved one who's just departed. And I'll tell you, that little bird looked at me, and it looked at me like very quizzically, and it was like it was telling me something. And I said to the casting director, I said to the casting director in Los Angeles, I said, oh my God, this little bird, this little cardinal just appeared. She's in Los Angeles. She said, what are those? We don't have them here. It's a northern bird.
Right.
And I explained it to her. I said, it's like, maybe this is a good omen. And she said, well, maybe it is. Ooh. And then when she called me later on or sent me a message to say, hey, Lenore, they want to offer you this role, I think the little cardinal knew, you know.
No,
like,
that's such a sweet story. That's such a sweet story. I love it. Yeah, that's so sweet. That's awesome.
So I'm so happy. That's what I was thinking, that was all on my mind. And then when the announcement came out and people were really happy, like fans were happy, that was just like the icing on the cake.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. Now you could do this in honor of your niece. That's pretty awesome.
Exactly.
That's so cool. I'm so excited. There's so much. So when you got, okay, so now you got the call, you know, everything's coming, you know,
Yeah.
existing, right? Existence. So when they announced it to the public, were you nervous? Were you like, how are they going to react? Did you know people were going to take to it very well? Did you think, you know, because I know there's a lot of different things. Maybe it's a little different for a voice actor versus, you know, the writers of the show. Were you nervous? Were you like, you know, I don't know, just tell me your thoughts on when you knew they were going to announce it and when they did, and then the reaction that you got from it. Because all I've read was positive reaction everywhere. Like, it was a storm on Twitter of X-Men 97's back,
So
the meme, everything.
a storm of Twitter.
Ooh, a storm.
You know, I really did, just from the response we'd had at the Comic-Cons, I really felt people would be excited. I really felt that the fans, like, I'd seen some of those tweets too, where fans were saying, when are we going to get another X-Men? When are they going to bring back the X-Men? You know, and so I was pretty sure people would be excited and they'd be happy. I was more nervous going into the studio for my first recording, for my first couple of episodes.
It's so much different now, right? So talk to us a little bit about how different it is now than it was before. I mean, now with technology, with all that, you know, we didn't have cell phones before. Like, I think the pace is probably moving a lot quicker. And obviously there's an army of a team working on this project. So talk to us about that.
Well, I loved, first of all, I had a Zoom meeting with the producers and with the casting director, who ended up being the director as well. So Meredith Lane is the director, voice director. And I loved meeting Bo and Charlie, who are the two producers. And we hit it off right off the bat. And we laughed and we had some really good times. So by the time I was going in the studio, I actually felt comfortable knowing that I would feel good with these people, working with these folks. But, you know, there's always an onus after you've been away from something for a while. Do I still have it? Do I still have the goods, right?
Got it. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But, you know, inside of yourself, you're going, am I gonna mess up? Maybe I don't have it anymore. Maybe you're gonna fire me on the first day. I mean, you just never know, right? So within a few seconds, really, of opening up my mouth and doing the first lines, I was like back in action. I knew. Yeah, it just rolled out of me, right? I mean, I am
riding a bike.
Yeah. I mean, the weird thing is I am Rogue. I just become her. The same as when I played Marilyn Monroe at the age of 19. I turned 20 during that production. I just became her. I became Marilyn. I talked like her. I walked like her. On stage, not off stage. I'm not one of those. I'm a method actor in that I do the method on stage, but I don't become that character and have to stay like that in real life. I know the difference between my character and me. Luckily, because I've done a lot of that soul searching.
That's awesome. Listen, I'm so happy, and I think the world is happy that Disney and Marvel are doing this right, and that they went and reached out to the original cast members and Eric and Julia and Mr. Houston, and they really did their homework, because, you know, now it's not only the work that they do, but the reaction from the fans. And I really believe that then not only did they want to produce something as good as the X-Men animated series, but they wanted to include the fans, and they wanted to include the originality of the old show into this one. And I really cannot wait till it comes out. I'm so excited. The world's excited. I can't wait for you guys to react to the first show when it comes out, because, you know, how are people going to react?
I know.
Oh my God. Yeah, it's funny because I asked Eric and Julia that, and they're like, we're going to probably turn off all our phones and hide in a room and come out a week later because we're so nervous. We don't know how people are going to react. But, you know, obviously there's good feelings behind it. I think everybody's doing it the right way. I think the people that are working, the new people, right, that are working on this show are invested in the characters and the storyline and the original series. So it's coming from a fan's heart, the people that are working on it. And I really have high and great expectations, and I think you guys are going to do a phenomenal job. I cannot wait. I'm so happy for you. So I want to congratulate you, right? On behalf of ToyQuest101, I want to congratulate the rest of the team. Obviously, our friends Eric and Julia, our friend Cal, who's awesome. We love Cal. But yeah, congratulations. I cannot wait to hear your voice again, even though I just heard it now and it gave me goosebumps. I cannot wait to hear it again. You know, obviously her mom's a huge Rogue fan. So we're an X-Men fan.
And like I said, she's got the stripes, she's got the white stripes going on too.
Got her Rogue going on,
awesome.
right? All
Looks
right.
fantastic. Let's hope they make the dolls sometime that have our voices come out. That would be
that'll be cool. I know. So we actually, the second time we had Eric and Julia on, they helped us unbox the Mondo Wolverine.
Oh.
And there's little rumors out there that they're gonna go through the X-Men character, so we're hoping for a nice Rogue Mondo character or figure,
right,
because those figures are awesome, right?
Yeah.
Obviously Hasbro's coming out with them too. We already got a couple on pre-order, which is nice because they had that nostalgia with the VHS tape, which I still own some of them. I thought that was a added touch. So a lot of cool things coming from, you know, the original X-Men animated series now into the X-Men 97. So super excited for that. But before we close out the show, Liana has another important question she wants to ask you. Go ahead.
Since it's Autism Awareness Month, can you give us some words of encouragement to kids who might want to follow in your footsteps?
Yes, I would say don't let anybody tell you it can't be done. Anything you want to do, you just put your mind to it and you make it happen. Believe in yourself and have faith versus fear. If you're feeling that fear, turn it into faith, turn it into excitement, okay? And just believe in yourself, because we really do all have our own special power, and you just got to figure out what's yours.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Thank you so much. That's awesome. So before we end the show as well, Lenore, why don't you tell everybody where they can find you? I know you're on Instagram, I know you're on Twitter, but go ahead and shout your socials out, because I know everybody's going to want to follow you, especially now with the X-Men 97 journey.
Yes.
We want to follow up on everything. And of course, what happens in April with the politics. I want to know about that too. So why don't you tell everybody where they can find you?
Okay, so I'm on Twitter, and I believe I'm at Zann Lenore on Twitter. And I'm also on Instagram, and I believe that's at Zann Lenore, but it might be at Lenore Zann, is one of the two. But just check it out. You'll know which one it is because you'll see that I posted recently. And I'm on Facebook, Lenore, just Lenore Zann. So yeah, follow me, tweet to me, you know, retweet, whatever, chat with me. I oftentimes chat with the fans on social media. And I love to hear from you. And, you know, I'm going to be doing my best to make you proud for X-Men 97, because we wouldn't be here without you guys, without the fans.
Oh, let's go. That's awesome. So we're going to have all the links in the bio of the video. Even though she said them, we're going to have the right ones down on the bottom. So no worries there. We got you covered. But Ileana, why don't you tell everybody where they can find us?
You can find us on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and TikTok.
And don't forget to subscribe to ToyQuest101. Lenore, we cannot wait to meet you. We are hoping to see you and the rest of the cast either in Philadelphia or New York when you come our way.
Yes.
This side of the world. It'll be an honor to meet you. Finally take some pictures and stuff. But
yeah, hopefully next year.
Oh yeah, let us know. We will be there to help out anywhere you can, right?
I'm going to a Comic-Con in Iowa in June and Grand Rapids, Michigan in November.
Nice.
And there's one other place that I just said I would do too, but I can't quite remember. I'll tweet it out when I remember.
Tweet it out. We're always retweeting your guys' stuff, so we'll definitely put all your info there. But thank you so much for being on the show, and we'll see you guys on the next episode of Toys Quest 101. Bye, guys.
Bye. Bye, Ileana.
Bye.